Sometimes we love ourselves too much. Today we're going meta, and we're talking about Only Murderers in the Building, about a podcast. Here today on our podcast, Pilot Pass. Welcome again, everybody, to John Stamos' 32nd favorite podcast. This is Pilot Pass. My name is Matthew Pizana, co-host of the Shindig and Soiree. And on the other end is my partner in crime, Del. Don't call me Steve Martin or Martin Sheen Pullen.
Why? So Martin Short doesn't get a shout out?
No.
No. Okay. Just double that.
That would have made
Martin
too much
Short.
sense.
They should have just ran together Steve Martin Short. So of course, it's great to see two of the three amigos back together. That was a nice. And we didn't get Chevy Chase, which apparently now we all know is kind of a big dickhead that nobody likes working with.
Probably a good call, yeah.
So maybe he was the original Selena Gomez, and
I'm thrilled with replacing him with Selena Gomez. Best decision ever, if you ask me.
Well, most people don't know that in the original Three Amigos, that's actually Selena Gomez portraying Chevy Chase, portraying Dusty Bottoms.
When she was that -10, probably -15?
Exactly, yeah.
Somewhere around in there.
She was El Wapo's daughter.
Yeah. Oh, very nice. Again, today we are doing the new show on the Hulus. It's called Only Murderers in the Building. It stars two of our favoriteest people. I'll let you guess which ones out of Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez. They are your stars. So they'll tell the people what this new wonderful show is all about.
So it starts with Steve Martin, who plays a famously now out of work actor who used to star as Brazos, the detective, who was very well known back in the day.
Who was the original David Carradine? Hang on. David Caruso.
There we go. Okay, there you go. So he plays Charles Hayden Savage, a washed-up television actor known for playing the character Brazos. We have Martin Short, who plays Oliver Putnam, a jobless Broadway director. And Selena Gomez is Mabel Mora, an apartment renovator. And all three of them live in this apartment complex called the Arconia. And in the very beginning, it's just the very beginning, so there's a cold open I want to talk about, which I love. But what kicks off the plot is that they're all listening to the same murder mystery podcast that was so popular, like Serial or something like that. And then it turns out there's an actual murder in the building. They're all asked to evacuate, and they meet each other in the local bar to find out that they all share a common interest in this murder mystery podcast that was interrupted because of a real life murder in their building.
You know, and they believe
while looking at the facts that they think they can solve this crime better than the police. And so that's kind of the kickoff.
The greatest part about this is seeing them all huddled around a map of Oklahoma. That's where the setting of the podcast is that they're listening to. And it's just so ridiculous thinking three people in this world would go drink and look at a map of Oklahoma. It kind of makes me sad.
So let's go ahead and start with the way the characters are introduced in the cold open, which won me over by the time Martin Short shouts. So it starts with Charles Hayden Savage, which we're giving up on the character names. It's obviously Steve Martin, is talking about, like, this is what makes New York great. You know, this is a wonderful city where anybody can do anything. You know, talking about the amazing part about how New York is this great city in the world. He kind of embraces that nature. And as he's walking, he's interrupted by a couple, and the guy's like, "Oh my God, you're Brazos. I used to watch that television show with my father. We're big fans." He's like, "Oh, great. You know, how's your father?" And he's like, "Well, he's in the hospital. He's dying." And it immediately takes a downturn from this, like, very,
and it keeps going down,
and it keeps going down. You keep finding his brother's worse and worse and worse off. And then, of course, he says, "Hey, by the way, can we get a picture?" Steve Martin's like, "Of course." So the guy hands him his camera for Steve Martin to take a picture of him and his girl, not having Steve Martin in the picture. Classic joke. I've seen it done before, but it gets me every time somebody does that.
And then how does it end?
That one I don't know.
He goes,
so it's a little vignette. Each one is a little vignette.
I'll tell my dad that you took the picture.
Oh, no, he goes, "Tell your dad that Brazos took that picture." And he goes, Oh,
He can't.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's in a coma.
So the second vignette is Martin Short talking about how the wonders and the arts of the city, and he's very flamboyant, and
That
he's
beautiful
got this
jacket.
big purple prince-like jacket on, and he's just flourishing. He's walking down the streets, and he's got these big like conductor hands that are waving around to everything. And then in homage to Midnight Cowboy, he walks in the middle of the street, and his monologue is interrupted when this car slams on its brakes and almost hits him. And this is the point where I was in on the show. He looks at the driver, and he goes, "Do you not see the coat?" And at that moment, he understood how flamboyant he was. Was more worried that the coat might be damaged or wasn't ostentatious enough that he wasn't even concerned for himself. So of course that got me. And then Selena Gomez talks about what it's like to being a woman in the city, that it's not the same as being a man, that every alley's dark and there's all these dark corners, and she lays at bed at night, thinking if somebody breaks in, how she's going to grab a needle, or her knitting needle, and start stabbing them in the eye and going to town all over their face. And
that's
she's
what
like,
had
yes.
my wife. She goes,
Yeah.
That's exactly my daydream. So they nailed that.
So that's what puts her gently to sleep, is thinking about violently murdering a man breaking into her apartment, and she goes to sleep over that. So by that, I was like, I'm done. I'm in. This is the tone was set right off the bat. It was hilarious. Each character has a great introduction. You know so much about how their characters are going to interact with the others. You have these two men that love the city, a woman that doesn't, but the two men are one, flamboyant in one way, and the other is kind of a little more stoic, but both being washed up. And right, I mean, so that just said it. And what's weird to me is this: if you had told me this was a Woody Allen film from just the beginning and really the whole pilot, I wouldn't have not have been surprised. It carries like the comedy from Woody Allen's earlier films, like Bananas and Sleepers and stuff like that, but with the criminal, undertones of like is it Crime and Punishment, but also Match Point, things like that, where when Woody Allen does like to discuss crime, but he does it in a not a lighthearted or fun way, but it felt like the pacing of a Woody Allen movie, and he's not involved at all. I was shocked. I thought like he's got to be executive producer or something. The tone just felt so close to a Woody Allen film. So if you like Woody Allen, I think you're gonna like this. If you also are one of those people, it's like, well, I would like Woody Allen, but I don't like him as a person. Well, then here's your way of getting your Woody Allen without Woody Allen.
Can't you do that through Louis C.K.? Oh wait, you still got that thing too.
Yeah, you still got that issue too there, buddy. So sorry. So
I want to talk about something. Before we get to the meat of it, I want to this is the first time we could talk about a show like this and how it kind of came together. Steve Martin and Martin Short have been on tour for the last couple years doing a comedy routine that is magical. If you have not seen it on Netflix, please go watch it. It is wonderful. But I don't think this show happens unless they're so cruelly mean to each other.
Yeah, they're so absolutely cruelly mean to each other, but you can tell there's love there. There's that runs deeper than anything in the words.
And I don't think this show happens without them. Now, certainly Selena Gomez is a key piece because she's an EP as well. But I think that them spending all that time together, they were able to kind of conjure up this idea when if they're just kind of seeing each other once in a while, I don't think that comes together. I really don't.
Well, and Martin Short isn't listed as one of the creators. It's the I'm gonna have to look this up real off. I think Hoffman is his last name. But Martin, apparently Steve Martin is the one that came up with the idea with this other gentleman. And I think he took it too short and said, you would obviously be perfect to play this other one. When it first started, I did feel that Selena Gomez was a weird choice. I don't know why, but it felt like, man, if you're going to get this, a female that's up to this standard of comedy, I don't know why, like Tina Fey popped to mind, who I believe is in the pilot for just a second in the podcast.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, but somebody like her, I thought would have been better suited. She's worked with Martin before, or somebody like, from Arrested Development. Just, that felt more up to the level of this standard of comedy, but she's clearly good in this. And so by the end of the pilot, I'm like, well, I'm fine. But she did feel a little odd compared to with the other casting.
Who would you want from Arrested Development? Like, which female were you thinking?
Well, here's the thing is,
Portia?
She's definitely what I think they want to drive home is that she's younger where these two are obviously way older men in their 60s. They've had careers before. She's a younger person, so she's coming at it from not only a female angle, but a younger person angle. So
oh no, I'm on the same page. I'm just trying to figure out which female on Arrested Development were you thinking?
You know what? The girl that plays Maybe.
Okay.
Only because now she is, in her, I think, 30s now.
She did Search Party. She does a great job on that show.
And she's done some dark stuff. She's very hilarious. You know what? Now I think about it, that's immediately who that would have fit exactly in. Not that Selena Gomez doesn't. It's just that did feel odd at first. It felt like they should have gone to a comedic icon in that age. When you're
though,
Steve Martin and Martin Short, two of the greatest, funniest actors of all time.
Can the person that plays Maybe, could she carry the gravitas to just be so disinterested in these two like Selena can? And I think that she can do that because of what she brings to the table in the first place. So when she's very deferential to both of them, I think that really works where it probably wouldn't have with a character like Maybe.
See, I think it would, because she demonstrates that in Arrested Development, how much she doesn't care about her mom or her dad, or how much she can blow off George Michael unless she needs him. She's also very manipulative in that show, but she can show that she can be likable and even run like Face Block or whatever the show is too. Right. So I think she would have been a perfect choice. Maybe Selena Gomez, and I'd say this was a fallback, or maybe they went, wow, Selena Gomez is great and we love her. And I mean, like you said, they made her, she's EP, that you don't normally get that credit without putting in either money or time.
Yep.
So maybe they went to her, or maybe she came to them, and who knows? I would be interested to know how she came along, because she does feel at the beginning the odd person out. I think by episode 2 I'm like, got it, all in, I'm done. This is a great team here.
Yep. All right, so I interrupted you earlier. Let's get into the meat and the bones of the first episode and the murder, as it were. Del, tell the people what the first episode is all about.
So, a gentleman in the building.
Would you call him a gentleman?
Well, maybe. Let's start with that. Let's get the guy that benefit of the doubt. He's been murdered. TBD, right? Because there are some stuff, even by the second episode, you're like, oh, there's relationships going on you didn't know about. But again, we're going with the pilot here, folks. That's what we do. So they start with the three of them meeting on an elevator with another gentleman who seems kind of rude and Martin Short tries to talk to Selena Gomez for just a second, and they're being polite to each other. Well, it turns out the gentleman who got on, who was slightly rude and on the phone, was carrying a bag of some stuff, I believe, that they didn't think was suspicious until later. And he's the gentleman that they find his body. He's been shot, I believe, or bludgeoned, one of the two. There's a lot of damage to his head. And because they're all three, they were listening to the podcast at the same time. When the police come and evacuate the building, Steve Martin happens to go down, here's another great line. So Steve Martin goes down to the bar with his map to continue listening to the True Crime podcast. Martin Short walks up behind him and he goes, "Oh, looks like you got the last seat in the house." And Steve Martin's a little short to me. He goes, "I'm sorry, look, if I've ever offended you in any of the times that you've auditioned for me, I apologize." Steve Martin goes, "I've never auditioned for you." And he goes, "You're not Scott Bakula?" And he goes, "I am not Scott Bakula." He goes, "Oh." I just, I don't know why they felt like getting Scott in there, but great too.
I really hope he makes an appearance on the show.
I do too. I mean, I love Scott Bakula.
He's making that. What show's he on now? CSI, NCIS, one of those shows.
I don't know what he's on now. I just remember that he appeared in the musical episode of Always Sunny as Scott Bakula as the janitor, which was really good. Yeah, he's fantastic in everything he does. Of course, famously from Quantum Leap, one of our other favorite shows. So he sits down, they start going through it together. Selena Gomez approaches, and as they're listening to what's going on in the podcast, which cuts to Tina Fey being the investigator, you see it visually happening, what they're seeing in their head.
So ridiculous.
And she sees that they're watching this podcast. She sees on the map that Steve Martin brings with him, which I thought is a very clever way, because otherwise, how would each person know that they're listening to the podcast? So they had to give one character a visual that would be a visual marker to anybody else that was watching the show. Ooh, that's Oklahoma. Ooh, those are notes laid out across here. Only a person who's been listening to that podcast would understand what that map represents.
When you saw the map, did you get flashbacks?
No, I did not get
Tremors,
PTSD Vietnam flashbacks of the year I had to live in Oklahoma.
Okay.
I don't even think I caught that it was in Oklahoma. And maybe that's just my mind blanking out.
Yeah, you just completely
and blurring it whenever that
Good
happens.
Lord.
Yeah.
You're like a rape victim.
So they all get into it. They have dinner together. And it isn't until they go back to the apartment and they happen to see the body. And there's another great scene where, and let me tell you something, I love when they put strong Black women, but especially like larger, strong Black women in positions of power where they don't take any shit. Like 30 Rock had Tracy Jordan's wife. And I don't know why. I love those, the director of the DC and DC Comics, the director of Checkmate. I don't know why I love those characters so much, because they just don't take shit off anybody. And they start talking about, well, here's why we don't think it was murder. You know, it wasn't suicide, it was murder. And she goes, what podcast y'all listening to? Goddamn, people listen to the podcast, free crime podcast all the time. I swear to God, it just goes off mumbling to herself about how stupid they all are. And
can you tell me what show she's from?
No, I didn't recognize her, but I immediately liked that actress, whoever she was.
You keep talking, and I'll tell you in 2 seconds. Yeah, she's from a big show, but I'm stupid and I can't remember it.
Okay, I didn't even I don't recognize her at all, but her delivery was comedically fantastic, and I liked whoever the actress was immediately. She was just so dismissive and rude and condescending to these three, morons that think they know better than the police. So after that, of course, they decided to go start rummaging for clues. Martin Short gets the idea of they should do a podcast. Now, this is where, like you were saying earlier, it gets meta. You and I are doing a podcast about a TV show that's about a podcast that's about them solving a murder based on a murder in their building that they got interested in based on a separate podcast about another murder.
Yes.
So it was wonderful layers. It's one of those sandwiches that they had in the comics, like that Scooby-Doo would eat, where it wasn't just one sandwich, it was multiple sandwiches stacked up. Yeah.
So the actress's name is Divine Joy Randolph, and I know her from the wonderful show High Fidelity that starred Zoe Kravitz that they redid. Oh, it's so good. Yeah,
the TV show they made based on the movie, right?
Yep. And she worked in the record store.
I haven't seen that. Okay, so I've got to check that out. So they find what they think is going to be evidence. They go down to the dumpster because they were like, again, he was carrying this weird bag when we first saw him in the elevator. And that's where they come across evidence that makes them think that they may be on the right track. The episode ends with them recording the podcast, Martin Short directing Steve Martin on how to read something over and over and over again.
Yep.
I also like that Martin Short's carrying around to record the podcast live as it happens, but he will have him redo takes in real life to make sure he's like, that sounds good, but now I'll put more emphasis on the word, maybe we were right about the murders. But then so finally that's when we get the name. They go, well, after this episode, there was that guy that was murdered in Central Park just earlier today. And I think it's Steve Martin goes, no, we got to stick to this. Only murders in the building.
Yep.
And you did the Peter Griffin from Family Guy. They said the name. They said the title. They said the name. And that's where we get that apparently they're only getting concerned at this point with this one murder, but possibly future murders only in the building of the Arconia.
I love so many things about this first episode. We've already talked about a bunch, but I want to highlight a few of my favorites, and I'm sure a few of your favorites. The interaction between the old people and the young people in this show is just second to none. It's so very wonderful when you mix that combination with three people who only care about themselves. If Steve Martin is saying something dickish to Martin Short, he just lets it fly by, doesn't care. He'll use it if he needs to, but he doesn't care. Same thing when they do it to Selena and she does it back to them. Their interplay that way is just magical. And I think that's going to make this show last, hopefully, more than one season.
There is a great bit of obviously comedy, but there's some good drama. For instance, when Steve Martin goes to pick the lock on the dead guy's apartment so they can go in, or his mail had been delivered to someone else.
Yeah, right.
So they're picking the lock of someone else's apartment in the hopes of getting this package that had been incorrectly delivered, was supposed to be delivered to the murdered man. And he gives her this speech about how his father raised them, and somehow this has to do with the lock picking and all this stuff. I don't want to do any spoilers, but you find out that speech that he gives that is very passionate and makes Selena Gomez kind of identify with him and understand where he's coming from as a person. Is definitely a speech that he's rehearsed before. Of course, you don't find that out till later. We also do find out that Martha did know
right there. I want to make sure that the end joke on that was my favorite, because they're talking, and then finally she goes, "Do you think we're going to be able to get in? Maybe we should try something else." He's like, "Oh no, I was done 5 minutes ago." And then he just walks
he popped the door open.
Oh,
the
so
second
good.
joke, there's a joke right after that where he goes, they're talking at the table right in the foyer, they come in the door and they immediately have another conversation about where the package could be. He's like, you take this room, I'll take this room, I'll take that. She's like, hey, Brazos, check your left hand. And he had been leaning on the box. So I love that he makes her look like a fool and waits for that entire monologue of his that he wants to give. And then she makes him look like the fool by like, hey, dickhead, you're not a real detective. Your hand's like literally resting on the package. We don't have to do any searching. So again, just great comedic timing beats. We do find out at the very end, though, that it's revealed that Mabel is friends with the killed gentleman, Kono, as evidenced by an old photograph of herself and a group of friends dubbed the Hardy Boys. So I believe, was she the one that said they used to go around trying to solve mysteries when she was a kid and they would call themselves the Hardy Boys? And so that's her interest in true crime podcasts, is that when she was younger, she was really into the Hardy Boys, not Nancy Drew.
Did you read the Hardy Boys? Were you a Hardy Boys reader?
Actually read the original series of Hardy Boys, which is over 100 books.
It is.
The second release that was in the late 80s, early 90s, the third release in the mid to late 90s, and I believe they had a fourth release. I read all three of the first series and a good chunk of the fourth. I also read all the original Nancy Drews and the second Nancy Drews.
They're fun stories.
Mysteries when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I've read every Encyclopedia Brown, and I've read every Tom Swift book ever written. And they're all ghost written. So they have names like Victor Appleton, or I can even remember Franklin W. Dixon was the name that wrote all the Hardy Boys books, even though they were written by different people all the time. I can't remember Nancy Drew, but Victor Appleton wrote all the Tom Swift books. And Victor Appleton the third wrote the new series that came out in the 90s. And then the other great one, which I loved, was originally Alfred Hitchcock Presents the Three Investigators, and then later just the Three Investigators. But I was hardcore into not murder mysteries, because these are for kids, but mystery books, like all the Encyclopedia Brown books. I've read even the new ones, even the TV show they made, I watched religiously. I could not get enough of adventurous crime mystery stories when I was a kid. I read that or sci-fi was the only two things I read.
How well do we know each other? This is a new segment that I'm starting right now. My question to you is still, what's my favorite murder mystery of all time? There could be two potential answers. I'll allow either one.
Murder mystery, does it include any kind of suicide pact? Because that will affect one of them.
I'm going to say no on that, because no.
Okay, because otherwise it would have been the two guys whose body they found with the cryptic notes who'd both taken cyanide pills. I mean, because I know you love your conspiracies, so that would have been one.
I mean, you're in the ballpark.
A good murder mystery one. Probably not Jack the Ripper or Jill the Ripper, depending. That's a little too obvious.
That's a little too old.
A little too old. Man, I feel like it's on the edge of my tongue. It's murder mystery. Let's see.
You could go with the last
O.J.
letter
Simpson?
of the alphabet. O.J. Simpson is a good one, because his son did kill the wife. But
you're really into that, yeah. The last
Zodiac.
name. Oh, right, you are. That's true. You were crazy.
And
and a
JFK.
great movie too. A great movie by Fincher. That is a crazy case. And then who is the other?
JFK.
Right. Well, okay, yeah, two of the biggest yeah, that would make so much sense. Hey, speaking of Quantum Leap, remember the episode where he jumps into the body of Lee Harvey Oswald? It was a two-parter.
I watched it a week ago.
Did you?
Last weekend I watched it. Yep.
Crapped the bed with conspiracy theories as we watched the first half of that episode, so much so that I refused to watch the second half with her in the room, even as a kid, because I'm like, I can't have you dealing with it. We're watching a fictional show about how it definitely didn't happen with a time traveling body swapper.
Sure.
So I don't need the other theories on top of that right now, Mom. So yeah, that was just such a great episode too. That was crazy. And then of course we watched the Stephen King one too.
You know, I didn't realize that episode was so deep in the run. Like it was like season 5 or 6 or something.
Yeah, it really, really is. In fact, I just went back and watched the finale the other day. I had forgotten that there were we're going to take an aside here to talk about Quantum Leap. I forgot that there had been other leapers in the show. Mm-hmm. At least 2 other leapers, a bad one and the one that he helps out getting out of leaping. I had completely forgotten about that. I've seen every episode multiple times.
I mean, you know, they had like a bazillion episodes per season, so I had to come up with some ideas
at some point. But okay, so back to 2 of the 3 amigos and Selena Gomez. Just all around, what a great pilot. Again, because it was structured as a show where it was a mini series. You know, they know the beginning, middle, and end. So your pilot doesn't have to be this rough cut of let's see what works and what doesn't. They did great world building, but through each of their 3 vignettes at the beginning, established the characters immediately. They show the different ways you can view the city of New York. They establish the apartment complex extremely well. They established that they don't really know each other, but how they come to know each other. They established the tie that binds them is their love of true crime stories. And it's just, so the world was built. By the end of episode 1, done. You don't need any more world building or character building. Now we get into episode 2, just kicks off with, let's continue with where we're going with this mystery.
The idea that Martin Short is so obsessed with creating a podcast out of this
he was so fantastic. And normally I'm a Steve Martin man over Martin Short, and I love them both. But in the episodes I've watched so far, he's so crazily flamboyant. Where Martin is a little more toned down, a little more serious. Because even stuff like The Jerk and The Man with Two Brains, Martin's always carried this gravitas of almost the straight man, almost like Leslie Nielsen is the perfect straight man ever for comedy. Like no one will ever top Nielsen. Even though he understood, he got the jokes, he played the straight man to a perfect T. Martin's always a little more in on it, and he's a little more clownish and buffoonish. Or Steve Martin is, I should say. But Martin Short just is so outlandish as a character. I just kept rooting for more and more and more of him. His eccentricities know no bounds. You know, Steve Martin's eccentricity is that he's wearing a pork pie hat. Selena Gomez's eccentricity is that she's worried about crime in the city. Martin Short has no end to his craziness as a director, who you find out is trying to even go back. And there are dramatic parts, like where he talks to his son, which I guess I should say they intercut the part of where Steve Martin is given the Brazos dialogue to Selena Gomez while they're lockpicking, is intercut with Martin Short visiting his son to ask for financial help. And so both are these really tense moments that you're learning about all 3 characters and their past and their relation to other people, and how, but it's weird that 2 of them are paired up to learn about each other. One's paired up so you learn about him by himself and his relation to his family. And they're immediately both destroyed by them when they finally open the door. The jokes that come after that just come tumbling. So they give you a nice bit of catharsis too after any dramatic moment. And the dramatic moments are not like, oh, boo-hoo, or even weeping. And you know me, man, I'll cry like, obviously the beginning of Up, but I've cried at Kit Kat commercials. You know, I'm like, anything can get me. If they even play the right music at a part, it can get me going and get a little weepy. But there's never like that. It's just fun. I gotta say, from the moment it started to the moment that episode ended, I had a roller coaster. It was awesome.
I want to give you Alan Arkin as another straight man that might work just as well as Steve Martin. So I didn't want to disrespect Mr. Alan Arkin.
He's great too. Yes.
That is the end of the show.
Alan,
because
you know what? Also Alan Alda. Alan Alda would also be one of there with Arkin.
Also, could have been a president, but it didn't work out for him on the West Wing. But it's worked out for us today. We are wrapping up the show. I think we both say yes on this show. That's pretty obvious. So instead of that, Del, will you tell the people where they can find us online?
Yes, I think that's definitely only yeses in the building.
Yes.
Check us out on pilotpasspod.com. That connects to all of our social media. That's kind of our blog. We also talk about some of the episodes. It links to our Facebook, Twitter, Discord, Instagram, Friendster, Bebo,
OnlyFans.
what OnlyFans? Thanks, I forgot about that one. Whatever the one that was all music for a while. I can't remember, Rock Nation
MySpace.
or whatever it was. MySpace.
Jingle.
Yeah.
Jingle.
That's true. That's a good one too. Yeah. There's also a Planet Talk, which won't be invented to the year 2028, but we went ahead and secured the / Pilot Pass, subdomain for it. So when that gets invented, we're covered there.
Are we on the Southern Baptist Church website as well?
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for the Westboro Baptist Church.
Yes,
I'm sure they'd hate us. Of course they would. We're delightful people. Of course they would hate us.
We are delightful indeed. Dale, as always, thank you for being my co-host on this episode of this wonderful show. Thank you, TV.
Yes, when you said you would send me the link to this, and I was like, asshole, I've already been planning on watching this for like a week. I just can't seem to find the time. Of course I'm gonna watch this, Yep. And boy, what a treat. Like if I'm telling you, people, do yourself a favor. You're gonna like this show. And if you don't, I don't know what to do with you. Don't listen. You'll probably hate the rest of our podcast too.
Except the one about Moesha. Until next time, this has been Pilot Pass. My name is Matthew Pizana. Del Pullen on the other end. Anything to tell the people before we go?
No, just thank you for contributing. Don't forget our Patreon. Every little bit helps. We've been slowly collecting money, and that is going to fund basically keeping the podcast going and slowly being able to let us attain some merch. And the one thing we're trying to do right now is hit 100 subscribers on our YouTube channel. So unfortunately, right now, you either have to click on the link through pilotpasspod.com, which will take you to the site where if you can't listen on a podcast platform, you can pull it up on YouTube. All the episodes are available. And hit that like and subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications. As soon as we hit 100 people, we're able to get that subdomain name that we need so bad.
That's all we got. I thought I was going to say something pithy, but yeah, you know what? You used to give us a joke on the way out. You got to.
I didn't think you were going to say anything pithy.
Well, that's because you anticipated correctly.
And I think I'm fine with ending on that right there.
Nope, I'm going to cut it before that. Doesn't matter.